for this one, it says write a static method, row sums, that calculates the sum of each of the rows in a given two-dimensional array, and returns these sums in a one-dimensional array. Okay, so let's think about that one more time. I'm given a 2D array, probably something like this. Calculates the sum of each of the rows. So it adds this up, puts it into a first entry in a single-dimensional array, one-dimensional array. And then it adds up all these and puts it in the second, or in the one spot in a one-dimensional array. Adds up all these and puts it in another spot in the one-dimensional array. So what we are returning is a one-dimensional array filled with whatever this adds up to, whatever that adds up to, whatever that adds up to, and whatever that adds up to. So there we go. The method has one parameter, a two-dimensional array of int values. Okay, great. The array is in row major order. Row major order, that's important, because we can do stuff with the rows then. If it was in column major order, we could do stuff with the columns. Okay, interesting. The array is in row major order. That's the entry in the R and row column, okay, or whatever, R row R and column C. The method returns a one-dimensional array with one entry for each row of AR2D2, such that each entry is the sum of the corresponding row. We already knew this. As a reminder, each row of a two-dimensional array is a one-dimensional array, and that's if you do it in row major order. If you did it in column major order, then each column would be a one-dimensional array. So it's just how you think about it, or like how you build it. And this says row major order. This is actually a good hint. I'm going to use this. Each row of a two-dimensional array is a one-dimensional array. Okay. For example, Mat 1, so this adds up to 16, this adds up to 32, that adds up to 28, that adds up to 20, and that's what's being returned. This thing is being returned. Okay, here are the methods, like we wrote this, so we are supposed to use it, assume that array sum works, and you must use it appropriately to receive full credit. We are writing row sums, so we don't have this one yet. That's probably part C. It's not probably, it's definitely part C. I already did this, I know. So, what do? First thing I do is I start it like right here. Static int rows. Okay, maybe, possibly, I'm definitely going to return something. So, I will make an array so that for what I'm going to return. Because I know I'm going to return an integer array. So, I'm going to say int. And then what do I call it? Maybe I'll call it row sums. So, and then I'm going to say new int, and what size does it have to be? Well, I need whatever I have returned, I need it to be the number of rows, right? So, how many rows are there? How can I figure that out? Well, for a two-dimensional array, the rows are AR2D.length. The number of columns, this is just a side note, the number of columns would be, wait a minute, before I forget. So the number of columns would be AR2D0.length. That's the number of columns. So maybe you want to make a note of that. This is the number of rows, and this is the number of columns. We don't need the number of columns right now. So, I've created something. I'm going to return row sums. Now, what do I want to do? Well, I want to go through this first, I guess it's a one-dimensional array. I want to look at the first row and go through and add all those. But I already have a method that goes through and adds all those. So that's array sum. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pass the first row to array sum, because that's a one-dimensional array. So I'm going to pass the first row to array sum and put it in the first spot in row sums, because I already have a method that adds up an array. Okay, great. So I need to figure out how do I pass the first row and only the first row. And then how do I pass the next row all the way until there are no more rows. Well, it sounds like I'm going to use a loop. A loop. It sounds like I'm going to use a loop. So I'm going to use a loop. Let's see here. So I'm going to say for, and I'm running through, I want to take care of all of my rows. So I mean, I already know how many rows there are. It's this many. So I can say for int I gets 0, I is less than arr2d dot length. That's the number of rows. And then I plus plus. So now I'm running through all of my rows only. Interesting. And I want to say, okay, so the first spot in, whoops, this is probably confusing. I'm going to change this. We'll just call it I want to change that. I don't want it to be the same name as the method. That gets confusing to me. It might screw something up, so I don't know. Let's change that to row total. Rot. Row total. Rotot for row total. Alright, there. I like that better. And then I'm going to say the 0th spot in rotot. Rotot. The first spot in that is the 0th spot. So I'll say I. That's going to get the sum of this row. So I can use my array sum. Array sum. And what do I put in it? I want to put in the first row. But then I'm going to use this hint. Each row is a one-dimensional array. So how do I look at the first row? Well, this is row major order. So I can actually just say ARR2D I, bracket I. Because what does this do? This looks at the 0th row because it's in row major order. Now, if I wanted to look at the first column, I would have to fill this in column major order because I can't like put an empty bracket and then something like that. That doesn't work. So it has to be in the way that it's built. And it says it's built in row major order, so I am allowed to do this. So this accesses the first row. Just like this accesses the length of the row. This accesses the length of the row, just like this accesses the length of the column. The length of the column is actually how many rows we have. Hopefully that makes sense. I don't know if I just confused a bunch of people, but there you go. So what am I doing here? I'm passing the first row. That's what this is. Maybe write that down as a little side note. This represents the ith row. So like the first time it'll be the 0th row or the first row and then the second row all the way up until I have no more rows. And then it's putting it into my one-dimensional array which I created. So I'm adding up all of those. And then I need my return statement. Return. What was it? Rotot. Rotot. Because that's the array that now has all the totals for each row. Sweet, man. That's pretty good. Then I'm done with that. There you go. That's it. Hopefully that wasn't too bad. I feel like the most confusing part was this part. But what to remember is this was column major order. Sorry, this was row major order. So that means this accesses the address of the ith row. So if I'm passing the address of the ith row, its array sum is actually looking at the address for a one-dimensional array. That is the ith row. Hopefully that makes sense. If not, you can ask me questions in class. And good day, sir or madam. I say good day.